Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز تتمنى لكم السلامة في ظل انتشار وباء كوفيد-19. المحامية جومانا كيروز مثلت على مدى 22 عاما ضحايا حوادث السيارات مع طاقم من المحامين ذوي الخبرة، وحصلت لموكليها على تعويضات بمئات الملايين من الدولارات قبل أن تختار المحامي الذي سيدافع عن قضيته. دقق في تاريخه المهني. ومع مكاتب جومانا كيروز ستنذهل بآراء مئات الموكلين وخبراتهم الإيجابية في جوجل ريفيوز. مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يتحدثون لغتك العربية والكلدانية. 248-557-3645 والاستشارة مجانية. مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يعلن عن استقبال الموكلين والمراجعين في العنوان الجديد 24370 Northwestern Highway Southfield على مسافة قريبة من موقع المكتب القديم. مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يتعامل مع كافة قضاياكم المتعلقة بالإصابات الشخصية من ضمنها حوادث السيارات، إصابات العمل، الأخطاء الطبية، بالإضافة إلى قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، الإفلاس، الضمان الاجتماعي وقوانين العائلة، والاستشارات مجانية. 248-557-3645. برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز المختصة في قضايا حوادث السيارات مع نخبة من المحامين في اختصاصات عدة منها الطلاق والهجرة والإفلاس، يأتيكم الآن على الهواء مباشرة. صعدتم أوقاتا أحبائي المستمعين، وأهلا بكم في هذه الحلقة الجديدة من برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. أرقام الهواتف للمشاركة على الهواء وهي 313-769-6666 519-256-1023. دائما عن طريق الواتساب بإمكانكم إرسال الرسائل والأسئلة عن طريق الرسائل النصية أو الصوتية 313-327-7074. أيضا بإمكانكم الحصول على استشارات مجانية من مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز التي تتعامل مع قضايا الإصابات الشخصية من ضمنها حوادث السيارات، إصابات العمل والأخطاء الطبية، قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الإفلاس، قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي وقوانين العائلة. 248-557-3645. حلقات برنامج يور رايتس تعاد على قناة اليوتيوب، ودائما نحملها بشكل يومي على قناة جومانا كيروز على اليوتيوب لتسنى لكم مرة أخرى الاستماع إليها والاستفادة من المعلومات التي تقدم في هذه الحلقات. بإمكانكم المشاركة في هذه القناة ليصلكم كل ما هو جديد. تحياتنا لكم مرة أخرى ونرحب بك جومانا. أهلا وسهلا في برنامج يور رايتس.
صباح الخير رامي، يعطيك ألف عافية. كيفك اليوم؟
الحمد لله، أنت كيفك؟ إن شاء الله تمام.
كتر خير الله، اليوم منيحة. Thank you very much. صباح الخير لكل المستمعين، وصباح الخير لضيفتنا لليوم المحامية ماريا بانشينكو. يمكن بتتذكر رامي أنه نهار الثلاثاء الماضي حكينا بطريقة مفصلة بس ما كانت كافية عن شيء بهم كتير من المستمعين اللي اسمه CDL license أو Commercial Driver's License. ما قدرنا خلصنا الموضوع لأنه هذا الموضوع فيه كتير معلومات، فلهذا السبب حبيت نكمل عنه اليوم، واليوم رح يكون كافي لحتى نخلص هذا الموضوع. كمان بنذكر انه هاي الحلقة مثل حلقة الثلاثاء الماضي، مثل حلقة امبارح وبكرة إلى آخره، عم ينزلوا على اليوتيوب ليلي بده يحب يسمعهم من جديد أو اللي بيهمه الموضوع ويمكن ما صار عنده مجال يسمع على الحلقة على جومانا كيروز يوتيوب channel. بلشنا هذا الموضوع الثلاثاء الماضي، الحلقة موجودة على جومانا كيروز يوتيوب channel، وبنكملها اليوم نهار الثلاثاء مع المحامية ماريا بانشينكو. أي شخص بحب يتصل بنتمنى لو السؤال اليوم بيكون فقط عن هذا الموضوع اللي هو CDL، لأنه there is a lot to cover، في كتير معلومات. It's very regulated. هيدا القانون، مين بيقدر يحصل على CDL، مين مفروض يحصل على CDL، شو واجبات اللي بيحصل على CDL إلى آخره. في كتير قوانين بولاية ميشيغان عن هذا الموضوع، بنتمنى إذا بس الأسئلة والتعليقات اليوم بتكون فقط عن هذا الموضوع. الأرقام 313 769-6666 و 313-327-7074 هو رقم الراديو واتساب اللي بنقدر نستقبل عليها أسئلتكم إذا ما بتحبوا تتصلوا على الهواء. Attorney Maria Panchenko, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you today?
Doing good, Joumana. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much for asking. Attorney Maria Panchenko, we did talk about commercial driver's licenses last year. I want to begin by asking you again a question that we talked about at the end of last Tuesday. When you represent some of what you do in addition to family law and criminal law and liquor's licenses and wine and beer, is that wine licenses? I know you're working on a certain project right now. And, right. And landlord tenant, you represent mostly landlords because there are no tenants' rights. You also represent people in traffic tickets. And one of your questions, one of the prominent, very surprising question in your questionnaire when somebody comes to you for a ticket, traffic ticket, is the following. Tell us what it is.
Whether or not they have a commercial driver's license.
Okay. Commercials, driver's license. Okay, very good.
It's basically want to know if they have a CDL. If they're a CDL holder, it's very important to know if you get a traffic ticket, your lawyer needs to know if they need to protect your CDL when they're going in and litigating your ticket.
Okay, very good. So one of the things we talked about last week that came up, that just like you are a lawyer, when we're lawyers, you and I, and they always tell us that you are a lawyer, not just at work, you are a lawyer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere in the world. It seems that you are a CDL holder 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere in the United States, maybe. What I mean by that is what you do on your personal time, your driving record, your personal driving record, on your own time, with your own family, on vacation, can come back to haunt you, can come back to bite you, and can come back to get you to lose your livelihood, which is being a commercial which is operating a commercial vehicle and having a commercial driver's license, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So,
absolutely.
Okay. And one of the things that we also want to talk about, there are a few points we want to bring across today, one of which we started last time. Again, if you are a CDL holder, you have to be very careful what tickets you get in your own personal life because it may lose you your livelihood. Second thing is, if you are a CDL holder and you are defending yourself on a regular traffic ticket, you'd better notify that lawyer because that lawyer may not have every option in the world on your behalf because that lawyer has to have in mind your CDL license and preserving it, because if you get more than one major violation and so forth, we'll talk about the consequences of that. And then another thing we want to talk about today is the duties. And you said in the outline you sent me that a lot of people don't know that they have some duties as a CDL holder. And one of them is if you are working for an employer, you have duties to notify your employer of certain reportable tickets that you get on your own private time. And you can lose your job if you don't report it, and you can lose your job if you do report it, depending on the kind of convictions. So there is a lot going on here. First off, let's begin by asking the following questions. What is a commercial driver's license, and who needs, also called a CDL, and who needs a CDL?
So essentially, a commercial driver's license is a specialized license that allows an individual to drive or operate large or heavy vehicles in the United States that are being utilized for commerce. In other words, if you're driving a very large truck that's carrying equipment, if you're driving a bus, if you're driving a large vehicle, and it's basically based on the weight of the vehicle or the amount of people that the vehicle can transport, then you are required to get a specialized license, a CDL, a commercial driver's license, and it is required by the law. So it's not like you can go and just start driving a bus because it's a one-time thing. You cannot operate a commercial vehicle without a CDL.
Okay. So tell us who needs a CDL.
So a person that is going to operate a vehicle that's going to weigh 26,000 pounds or more, they're going to need a CDL. If you are going to drive a bus, it's 16 people or more, you're going to need a CDL. If you have a certain type of material that you're transporting, if it's hazardous material, you're going to need a CDL and you're going to need a special endorsement. So it's this kind of law is very complicated. It's very long. It's extremely comprehensive, and there's a lot to it. But generally speaking, somebody who's going to drive a commercial vehicle or something that is classified as a commercial vehicle is going to need a CDL.
Okay. Before we continue with the CDL, we have two callers on the phone, and let's, Rami, I assume that their questions have to do with our topic today,
Yes.
CDL.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take our first caller. Is this Yahya?
Yes. Hello. Hi, Joumana.
Yeah.
How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for all this information. I have two questions. As a CDL holder, if I get a ticket from another state, like Indiana or Wisconsin, which law they will follow? They will follow the Michigan law for me as a CDL operator. So I get a ticket with my personal car. I wasn't drive the truck. I was drive my personal car, but I get involved like on ticket on different states, not here in Michigan. So they are following Michigan law, or they are following where I get the ticket law. My second question is, so as a CDL holder, which type of tickets that will be like, I need to worry about? Like speeding is like, I need to worry about it, or just like any violence with ticket. So that's my two questions, and thank you for the lawyer, Mary, I believe. Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Joumana.
Thank you for that, Yahya, and thank you, Maria, in advance. Before we answer the second part of his question, which is a big answer, what is a major offense and what is a serious violation? What's a major violation? What tickets, in other words, should he have to worry about, or should the CDL? I think the first part of his question has two parts. Number one, he got a ticket on his own personal time, driving his own personal ticket in another state. He wants to know which law applies. I think maybe he meant more than which law applies. Is it going to come back and haunt me if I am a commercial, if I have a CDL here in Michigan? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but traffic laws vary from one state to the other. So if he gets a traffic ticket in Milwaukee, he has to hire a Milwaukee lawyer and follow Milwaukee law for that ticket, right?
Correct.
Okay. However, I really think what he meant is, do I need to worry about that ticket that I got in my own personal car in another state? Can it come back to haunt me here in Michigan if I am a CDL driver?
Yes, it can affect your CDL license. Absolutely.
Estes Yahya, hopefully you have not left us. We need to know what is the offense that you got in another state and whether it resulted in a conviction or what. Okay, I see that you left us. If you can call us again, Estes Yahya, because what offense and what conviction it led to is very, very important. And hopefully you got the ticket, but you haven't yet arrived to the offense, meaning it hasn't gone through the court yet, because one of the messages we're trying to get across to everybody is, if you have a CDL license, you need your traffic lawyer to be mindful of the fact that you have a CDL to save or to preserve. So they can't just accept anything. They have to make sure that it does not endanger your CDL.
And generally speaking, to Joumana's question being what offense should he worry about, any traffic ticket for CDL holders should be a concern. That's why I ask that question every time of any traffic ticket, just because if it goes on your record, it's going to matter. It's going to matter.
So it's not really the point. It's whether it is reportable. So one of the examples you gave me is speeding just 1 to 5 miles per hour over the speed limit carries 0 points in Michigan, but it is the kind of thing you need to worry about because it will go on your record, right?
Yeah. Yes. Anything that is going to abstract to your record. Correct, Joumana. Anything that's going to abstract to your record, you've got to tell somebody if you have a CDL. It's very important.
Let me interrupt and just tell people, abstract your record is the technical term for goals on your record. So if you get a speeding ticket, even if it has 0 points, if it results, by the way, let's be very clear. Everything we're going to talk about today, any violation, any offense, any whatever, we're talking not about how you are charged, but we're talking about how you are convicted. So if you get a ticket and it gets reduced to something that it does not go on your record, you don't have to worry about it. But if you reduce it to something that will go on your record, you have to worry about it. Correct, Maria?
Yes, you have to worry about it if it's going to go on your record for your CDL. And even if it doesn't go on your motor vehicle report, depending on what you were originally charged with, it can, in a complex way, affect your other reports that CDL holders do have. But as far as your motor vehicle
talk about
report,
those
it's very complex. Yes.
Yeah, this is very complicated, by the way. There is your record, like your regular record, what we call your traffic record, what everybody talks about. Let me get my traffic record, meaning that's what lay people obtain. But there are various other records when you are a CDL holder. For example, something called a DAC record, which is what an employer looks at before they hire you. A PSP record, which is pre-screening for insurance purposes. A CSA SMS record, which is for the insurance company of your employer. But to answer your question, Ustaz Yahya, even a speeding ticket on your own time may be the kind that goes on your record. And one of the things you'd have to do, if you're working for yourself, that's fine. But if you're working for an employer, you have an affirmative duty to report it in writing and within 30 days, not of getting the ticket, but of getting convicted of the ticket. So again, you used a simple example, Maria, of speeding 1 to 5, 0 points, but it will go on the record. It will go even on the traffic record. And for that reason, the person who gets a traffic ticket on their own time, on their own personal car, because they have a CDL, have an affirmative duty to report that within 30 days to their employer, 30 days from when they get convicted by the court, right?
That's right.
Okay. So let's tell Mr. Yahya and all of our listeners what kind of violations should he worry about. Will you allow me to read them? I'm reading from the outline that you took a lot of time preparing. Thank you so much. So there are things called major violations. And whether you commit those on your own personal time, in your own personal car, or while driving, the commercial vehicle, it does not matter. Being under the influence of alcohol, if on your own personal time and you have a blood record, alcohol record of 0.08 or more, and if you are driving the commercial vehicle and you have an blood alcohol level of 0.04 or more, that's a major violation. If you are under the influence of a controlled substance, if you refuse to take an alcohol test as required by the state of Michigan. This is new to me. If you get stopped by the police on your own time or driving your commercial vehicle, and the police wants you to take a preliminary breath test, you cannot refuse it, because here in Michigan, and did you say this is a relatively new law?
No, no, it's not. It's a civil infraction under Michigan law, but it's a major offense for CDL holders.
It is a major violation if you are a CDL holder, even if that happened in your own car. If you leave the scene of an accident in your own car or in, as a CDL driver, if you use the vehicle to commit a felony, if you cause a fatality, these are all called major violations. Now, there are serious violations. Serious violations are less serious than the major violations. One of them is if you are speeding excessively, 15 miles per hour or more, if you are driving recklessly, if you are making improper traffic lane changes, if you are following a car too closely, meaning you're not leaving, let's say, in a short, clear distance if you are behind the car, by way of example. If, God forbid, you cause a fatal accident. If you drive a commercial vehicle, but without a CDL. If you drive a commercial vehicle without having the CDL license on you, physically on you. If you drive a commercial vehicle without the proper class of CDL, all of these are called serious offenses. And the reason we're talking about major offenses and serious offenses is the consequences of getting them and what that does to your CDL driver's license, right?
Right.
Can we talk about first, and we're talking not only about a violation, we're talking about a violation leading to a conviction. So let's talk about the less serious ones. If you're driving over the speed limit, changing lanes, you don't have your CDL drivers on you, and so forth. What happens if you get a first conviction for a serious violation? What happens to your CDL?
Well, as far as disqualification goes, the first violation for under the serious violations isn't going to result in your disqualification. However, it could result. Yes, it still could affect your CDL in various ways, but not in a sense of getting disqualified.
By way of example, you have to report it to your employer, and your employer can fire you.
Exactly. Okay. That's a great example.
But the first one will not result in a disqualification. However, if you get a second serious violation within 3 years of getting the first, what happens to your CDL license?
That's going to result in a 60-day disqualification.
Okay. Excuse me. What if you get another serious violation within 3 years?
120 days disqualification.
Okay. Now, let's say, God forbid, you committed a major violation. You were under the influence of alcohol, under the influence of controlled substances, and so forth and so on. What happens for your first major violation leading to a conviction? Do you get disqualified, or is it a warning?
No, you're disqualified for a year.
For 1 year?
It's possible it could be 3 years if you have a special license on your CDL, it's a special hazardous materials license, then you could have a 3-year disqualification.
Okay. What if, God forbid, you got convicted for a first major offense, and then you got convicted for a second major violation? What happens to your CDL?
You're going to have a lifetime disqualification.
That means you're disqualified for life. However, it says here, what you sent me, is that if you wait 10 years, you may be eligible for reinstatement, depending on everything else.
Yes. 10 years is a long time to go without your CDL, though. So it's a major penalty.
Okay. So, all right. We have Estez Abu Ali. So let's take his question, and then let's take a quick break. One of the things we're talking about today is if you drive and you get driving violations, depending on what they are, this law is very regulated, and for good reason. when you are carrying up to 26,000 pounds of material, if you're carrying hazardous material, if you're transporting more than 16 people, if you're towing a trailer and other vehicles amounting 26, your responsibilities are big. So that is why the law is so rigid. The first points we got done explaining is that your behavior as a driver on your own time or while you are behind one of those commercial wheels can result in you getting disqualified temporarily or even permanently, and can result in you, if you work for somebody, losing your job because of the duty to report. But we'll talk about that more in detail. Let's take Estez Abu Ali and we'll continue with the subject. تفضل Estez. يا أهلا وسهلا.
Hello, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I got a question. I bought a house before like a month and a half ago, and I got a construction guy like I did a deal with him, like he's gonna take the full house. He's gonna finish the full house with the basement and upstairs and everything, with the material, label and material, and he's gonna charge me around like 16,000. All right. So he did the first floor. Okay. He took from me. There is a witness. There is no contract between me and him. He took from me $12,000, and when he finished the up.
I'm so sorry, but our questions is about, our topic today is only about commercial driver's licenses.
Okay, but can you like help me with it's just a question. It's like just a question.
Call our office and leave the message for Attorney Maria, and she will call you back. Can I give you the number?
Please hold on 1 second.
Are you ready?
Just a second, please. Just a second.
How
okay, go ahead.
Okay, 248.
Okay.
Okay. Rami is telling us that he will give you the number off the air. We're going to take a very quick break, and we will come back with the subject of commercial driver's licenses, CDL.
مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز تتمنى لكم السلامة في ظل انتشار وباء كوفيد-19. المحامية جومانا كيروز مثلت على مدى 22 عاما ضحايا حوادث السيارات مع طاقم من المحامين ذوي الخبرة، وحصلت لموكليها على تعويضات بمئات الملايين من الدولارات. قبل أن تختار المحامي الذي سيدافع عن قضيتك، دقق في تاريخه المهني. ومع مكاتب جومانا كيروز ستنذهل بآراء مئات الموكلين وخبراتهم الإيجابية في جوجل ريفيوز. مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يتحدثون لغتك العربية والكلدانية. 248-557-3645 والاستشارة مجانية. مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يعلن عن استقبال الموكلين والمراجعين في العنوان الجديد 24370 نورث ويسترن هايواي ساوثفيلد، على مسافة قريبة من موقع المكتب القديم. مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يتعامل مع كافة قضاياكم المتعلقة بالإصابات الشخصية، من ضمنها حوادث السيارات، إصابات العمل، الأخطاء الطبية، بالإضافة إلى قضاء الهجرة والتجنس، الإفلاس، الضمان الاجتماعي وقوانين العائلة، والاستشارات مجانية. 248-557-3645. Your Right مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. عودة لبرنامج Your Right، وبالتأكيد بإمكانكم المشاركة على الهواء، والأرقام في الاستوديو هي 313-769-6666 519-256-1023، ودائما على الواتساب 313-327-7074. رقم المكتب، مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز، للاستشارات المجانية هو 248-557-3645. جومانا نرجع لك.
شكرا رامي. كمان مرة الشخص اللي عنده commercial driver's license لازم يحافظ عليها، ولا يقدر يحافظ عليها بده يكون منتبه على سلوكه بالسواقة، مش بس وقت اللي بيكون on the job إن كان عم يشتغل لنفسه أو لحدا تاني، بس كمان in his own personal time. مشان هيك أي traffic ticket lawyer هو جيد لازم يسأل الإنسان اللي بيروح لعنده وعنده مخالفة سيرية عادية إذا هذا الشخص حائز على جنب على commercial driver's license، لأنه إذا عنده commercial driver's license هيدا بيحدد شو خيارات اللي بيقدر يقبلها المحامي بالنيابة عنه. ما بيقعد يقدر يقبل شو ما كان المحامي بالنيابة عنه، لأنه يمكن يقبل بعض الأمور اللي رح تعرض صاحب CDL إنه يخسرها. يا بيخسرها لأنه بيصير عنده disqualification، يا بيخسرها إذا عم يشتغل عند حدا تاني، لأنه القانون بيقول إنه there is a duty to report. وبتقلي المحامية ماريا بانشينكو إنه في كتير عالم عندهم CDL بعد ما كتير مستوعبين هيدا الجزء من القانون اللي بيقول إنه للشخص اللي بيشتغل عند حدا، مش الشخص اللي بيشتغل لنفسه وعنده CDL، للشخص اللي بيشتغل عند رب عمل، والشخص اللي عنده CDL أخذ مخالفة لو شو ما كانت المخالفة any traffic violation other than a parking ticket. يعني إذا كانت parking ticket، صاحب CDL ما عنده واجبات يبلغ رب العمل تبعه. anything other than، بغض النظر it disqualifies him it doesn't disqualify him، بغض النظر شيء غير disqualification اسمه a duty to report. شو هي هيدي duty to report؟ يعني إذا أنت موظف وعم تستعمل CDL تبعك لتشتغل عند رب عمل، القانون بولاية ميشيغان بيقول أي مخالفة سيرية بتحصل عليها بتوصل لconviction، لازم غير parking ticket you don't have to disclose أي شيء other than غير parking ticket. إذا أنت you are in an employer-employee relationship, you have an affirmative duty to report it to your employer. How? In writing، كتابيا. شو التايم ليميت؟ 60 days. 60 days من أي مد؟ 60 days من وقت ما بنحصل على التيكت؟ No. 60 days من وقت ما بنحصل على conviction، لو شو ما كانت، قد ما تكون صغيرة، قد ما تكون كبيرة، قد ما تكون جدية، وقد ما تكون غير أساسية. الشخص اللي does not report it in writing within 60 days risks losing his job. يعني رب العمل بحق له يطير هيدا الموظف لأنه هيدا الموظف ما بلغ عن الترافيك تيكت تبعه. كمان مرة بدها تكون كتابيا، وبده يكون التبليغ ضمن 60 نهار من وقت ما صار في conviction بالمحكمة. شغلتين مختلفين. يس، في مخالفات ما بتوصل لديسكواليفيكيشن، مشان هيك حكينا فقط عن شيء بيسموه major violation وشيء بيسموه serious violation. نحن هلا عم نحكي عن any violation غير a parking violation. كمان هي there is a duty to report it to your employer in writing within 60 days. ناخد اتصال شخص بحب يسألنا عن regular driver's license not a CDL. That's fine, we'll take it, no problem. يا أهلا وسهلا. نعم يا أهلا وسهلا.
معك صفية مهنا.
يا أهلا أستاذ مهنا، تفضل.
بدي أسأل أول شيء، أنا عندي سيارة خاصة وبشتغل ديليفري، يعني بعمل مع الانستاكارت. هل بدي رخصة شيء عمومي ولا ما لها علاقة؟ معي رخصة عادية يعني.
شو هو شو what do you drive an Instacart؟
ايه انستاكارت، يعني أنا سيارتي بوصل أغراض، بعمل ديليفري مثل درداش وهدول، يعني باخذ أغراض من الكروكر لكلاينت على بيته.
أنا بعرف الجواب لأنه عطتني المحامية ماريا بانشينكو مين اللي لازم يحصل على commercial driver's license، لأنه one of the serious violations one of the serious violations somebody gets if you are required to have a commercial driver's license and you're driving without it. So your question is a very, very good question. Attorney Maria Panchenko, this gentleman is using his own car to do something like DoorDash, and he wanted to know whether he needs to obtain a commercial driver's license. And I said, thank you for asking, because one of the serious violations for which, you can be suspended or disqualified is if you drive without a valid CDL, if you are required to have a CDL. Is he required to have a CDL?
No, because
Again,
he's not driving a commercial vehicle. He's just driving his personal vehicle to deliver groceries or I believe Instacart is a grocery delivery service. And
Yeah.
if he's using his personal vehicle and it's not classified as a commercial vehicle, then he does not require a CDL.
Mm-hmm.
So let me add to you. Let me repeat who is required to obtain a CDL. Number one, you have to be an American citizen, by the way, or you have to be a green card holder. And Attorney Maria Panchenko tells me that this is a relatively new rule in the past 2 to 3 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the past few years, they've implemented that at the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Administration, and it's kind of sweeping its way through the U.S.
So you have to be an American citizen or a green card holder.
Green card. Any green card.
Very good. And you have to have if you have a car, you're driving a car or a vehicle rather, that has 26.001 thousand pounds or more, that doesn't apply to you, or you're driving a combination vehicle, يعني أكتر من شغلة. For example, you're towing a trailer or other vehicle, and again, the gross weight is 26,001 pounds or more. That does not apply to you. Or you drive a vehicle that transports 16 or more people, including you. So you and at least 15 more people, like a bus. That's not you. Or you're driving a vehicle that is carrying hazardous material, and you are not carrying hazardous material. So you are not required to have a CDL.
اوكي. اذا سؤال ثاني بس، اذا بدي احط ساين تجاري للكوكا كولا او ل هات بيتزا او شيء هيك يعني فوق السياره، is it commercial بدها شيء لايسن ولا بس مجرد ما اقدر احطها؟
I don't know if I will know that. I know that the Secretary of State has strict rules about that, but let me ask her anyhow. What if, as he is doing DoorDash, he wants to use the roof of his car? We've seen cars with a kind of billboard signs advertising for someone, a company or a facility or something like that. Can he do it? I suppose, number one. And number two, does he need a commercial driver's license? I don't know if it's something you need to look into, Maria, that you don't know the answer off the top of your head.
Yeah, but I can tell you off the top of my head, I know that placing one of those types of devices on the top of your car wouldn't necessarily mean you have to have a CDL, as long as it doesn't create 26,000 pounds, which I would hope not crush your car. But the actual rules and place for that, I would have to look up what you need to do in order to put something like that on your vehicle, because there are certain things like, for instance, Joumana, when somebody has certain color lighting on their car, you know, there are specific rules that you can't have certain colors due to the emergency vehicle codes and things like that. I think it would be very specific to the size, what's on the car, how it's secured, how high it is, things of that nature.
And where can he find the answer? I suppose it's on the Secretary of State website somewhere.
Yes, it's going to be somewhere inside the Secretary of State in permitting. And I can look into it as well if you'd like to call the office and we can have a consultation about that.
Okay, thank you.
This was a wonderful question, because he's doing something commercial, and he does not want to violate the law. He wanted to know. I don't think everybody knows who's required to have, because there is, I think, this mistaken assumption, Maria, that if you're engaged in a commercial enterprise, that maybe you need a commercial driver's license. Well, no, unless you're transporting 15 or more people, 16 including you, or hazardous material, or you're lugging a lot of weight, specifically more than 26,000 pounds, then you are not required to have a commercial driver's license. So engaging in a commercial enterprise alone is not enough to require you to have a CDL, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So one thing if you have a regular ticket and you are a CDL holder, it's so important that your lawyer knows that, because your lawyer who is defending you on your regular traffic ticket needs to have your CDL in mind. Because again, if it's something that's going to be reported, and again, reporting, when we say reporting, other than reporting or notifying your employer, when we say reporting, there are different places a CDL holder's personal and record as a CDL is going to be reported. There is the regular traffic record, that's what you call the MVR, motor vehicle report. That's what everyone talks about, UI and everybody. But then there is something that applies to CDL holder that employers look at. It's called your DAC record. Employers are going to look at your DAC record because they want to know how much of a risk you are to them based on your history in your own personal life as well as in your, on the job. Your PSP record, and that's your pre-screening record. Can you tell us a little bit more what that is?
Yes. So essentially what the PSP record is going to do for employers is that they have access now to the most recent 5 years of car crash history, roadside inspections from your commercial vehicle, all that's kept in the database by the FMCSA, or the Federal Motor Carrier database. And so that gives them access as a carrier, as an employer that employs CDL holders, to take a look and see what's been happening in your driving history and what's been happening inside of your roadside inspection as you've been operating commercial vehicles. And they utilize this information when they're doing pre-employment screening. And that's exactly what it stands for, pre-screening program, pre-employment screening program. And, this is definitely something that you want to be keeping in mind when you're getting traffic tickets and different things, because it's not just your motor vehicle record or your traffic history report that's kept at the Secretary of State that's important here when you're dealing with a traffic ticket. It's the PSP, as you said, Joumana, and the DAC, which is also a mechanism used by employers or carriers that employ CDL holders when they're deciding whether or not to hire you.
Right. I think that I'm not going to talk about that, but it's not that easy, by the way, to obtain a commercial driver's license. You have to go through a lot of hoops. I mean, remember how a gentleman called us last Tuesday and said, I'm in the process, I'm in the hiring of CDL drivers for a large company, and I get all these poor newbie CDL drivers. Well, you gave me some information on this, and there are a lot of hoops you have to go through to get a commercial driver's license. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident. You have to show proof of your Social Security. You have to complete an application where you write a statement about your medical condition and your driver qualifications. If you have had a change in your physical conditions since your last driver's license renewal, which may affect your ability to drive, you will need to fill out a special form. You have to pass the required knowledge and vision, nazar test. You have to pass the knowledge tests. You have to practice driving under the supervision of a driver who has a CDL for the type of vehicle you wish to drive. If you don't pass it, you're going to have to wait. You schedule your CDL skills test. You wait 14 days before you take it. Your skills test is scheduled at a public driver testing business or a private agency authorized by the state to conduct CDL skills tests. You pay a correction fee and so forth. So it's not that easy to get a CDL.
No, and also to add to that caller from last week, there is period of time when you're kind of like when you have a driver's license, Joumana, you get a learner's permit. And during those waiting periods before you take your final test, I mean, you're on a permit when you're under that supervision. So, I mean, it is strictly, it is strictly enforced, and once you actually get the CDL, you're still subject to, obviously, we've been going over this for the past hour on the show, a lot of enforcement divisions and codes that you have to adhere to. So, I brought this to your attention, all the different channels that you have to go through, because it is a concern for the carriers. Why aren't you a safe driver? How could you have gotten your license?
The insurance company insuring the truck.
The carrier, yeah.
The employer, excuse me.
And yes, it's a concern. It's a big concern. Right. It's going to jack up their rates real high if you end up with a bunch of tickets, especially for this manager who called last week. He's concerned that he's not protecting his employer by hiring an unsafe driver, subjecting himself to liability.
And by the way, thank you for mentioning the permit. You're right. First, you have to pass the knowledge test to obtain what's called a commercial learner's permit, CLP. That allows you to practice driving under the supervision of another driver who has a CDL. It's like a co-pilot. You don't pilot a plane immediately. You have to be assistant to the pilot for a number of hours before you become a pilot of the plane. So the same here. You have to practice under the supervision of a driver who has a CDL, and then you move on to your CDL skills test.
Yes, and you have to wait it's got to be at least 14 days to convert. So they are the Secretary of State and the motor carrier, the federal branch. Everybody's doing everything they can to try to ensure the safety on the road. And obviously, as you stated earlier on the show, the premise of that is really because, these are big trucks and you've got little cars driving by them. You got to make sure that these drivers are safe, especially if they're transporting materials that could, if God forbid, a crash happens, creates a catastrophe.
We had a client who you helped, who did not have a traffic violation, but he had an out of service but he also had something called an out of service order, OOSO, while operating a commercial vehicle. So what are the consequences of violating an out of service order? Can you tell listeners what's an out of service order, and can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes. So essentially, when you're driving a commercial vehicle as a CDL holder, and you're subject to inspections on the road. And I know we had a caller call in with a pretty complex question last week about this as well. And in this case, the driver was driving a commercial vehicle that had been subject to inspection by a state trooper, which they're allowed to perform those. And they go over the truck and they check the brakes, they check the engine, they check the lights. And if you're found to be non-compliant with the commercial vehicle code and keeping it and operating a safe vehicle, commercial vehicle, then you can get a violation. And there's 3 different possible things that could happen in one of these inspections. You could be found not to be in any kind of violation. You could be found in a violation that is not serious, so you wouldn't be subjected to an out of service order. But if the violations on the truck are so severe that they have to pose a danger to other people on the road, the violations of your truck is so unsafe, they will place your vehicle out of service. And when you're out of service, that truck cannot operate, or even the driver cannot operate until the violations have been corrected and documented. The proper authorities at the FMCSA, you have to send the report in showing when the repairs were completed and to get that truck back in service. So in that situation, those types of things will be reported and can impact your the CSA or the Safety Administration's code. That can impact your scores and your carrier's scores, and they're going to be very upset about that. So it's very important for commercial vehicle drivers, CDL holders, to check their trucks and check their equipment before they take off and make sure everything's in working order, so that if you are subjected to a inspection on the road, you don't get one of these violations.
Okay, I'm reading here. We have about 4 minutes remaining. The first violation that results in a disqualification for violating an out-of-service order is no less than 180 days, but no more than 2 years. However, if you said you get a second violation within 10 years, then your disqualification will be at least 3 years, anywhere between 3 and 5 years. So very serious.
Yes, if you have a Category 1 violation, absolutely. Yeah, it is complex, and that is why this is such a specialized. This is why they have such rigid rules, because it is a very complex, but it's a great opportunity for people to earn a living. But you have to be in compliance with all of these things, because it is everything on the line if you make a mistake, and being knowledgeable about these things can help keep you employed and keep you on the road.
Right. And Category 1, again, is if you transport hazardous material. And if you don't transport hazardous material and you do violate an out-of-service order, again, like you said, the first violation will still get you disqualified between 180 days and 1 year, and the second one somewhere between 2 to 3 years, and the third one is between 3 and 5 years. So owning a commercial driver's license is a huge responsibility on the holder. It makes them a very, very good living, but because there is so much riding, that there is so much hazard on the road to them, but mostly, I think, other drivers, much smaller cars, the laws are very, very stringent, at least here in the state of Michigan. And your behavior, even when you are outside of the job, whether you're self-employed or working for someone, your driving behavior can come back to get you disqualified from using your CDL, and can put you in a situation where if you are working for someone else, you have an affirmative duty to notify them in writing within 60 days. And that may get them to fire you. And that would be for good cause, because you are creating a risk to them, although you're doing it on your own time. So it's a huge, huge responsibility. And again, some things are more serious than others as far as disqualifying from using it. But then if you work for somebody else, one reportable offense is enough to get you fired from the job. In that case, you'd have to work for yourself because you have no other choice. Because future employers will access all of these reports that we normally don't know anything about. And you mentioned them, the DAC, the PSP, the CSA, SMS. So the two things here to leave our listeners with is, number one, be careful how you drive at all times. If you are a CDL driver, don't ever let a lawyer represent you in a traffic ticket, however minor, other than a parking ticket, however minor, without them knowing if they agree to this plea or that plea, this conviction or that conviction. Might it affect your holding your CDL or getting disqualified, one, and then two, might it give rise to a duty on your part to report it to your employer if you are employed, in which case you're almost certain to lose your job.
Absolutely.
And with less than 1 minute, things going on somebody's record are always important, because your insurance will go up whether you are a CDL driver or not. And if you get more than 12 points, your license will be suspended for 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, 1 year. So it's serious. I think
absolutely.
that,
yes, absolutely.
30 seconds.
you're just 100% correct. It's always important to make sure that you're paying attention to your traffic record, no matter CDL or not.
This show will be available on the Joumana Kayrouz YouTube channel within the next 12 to 24 hours. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to those who called. Attorney Maria Panchenko, thank you for your extensive knowledge on the subject and so many other subjects. Rami, thank you. And until tomorrow.